Welcome to our Wednesday interview. Today we are here with Melissa Dohse. She is an LCSW and is the clinical director of Cultivate Counseling. Her specialties is trauma, postpartum support, and sexual abuse. Welcome, Melissa.
Thanks, Marca. I'm glad to be here.
Thanks. So to start off, I would love to hear a little bit more about what your specialties are and why you're excited about them, especially relates to Sage Home.
Yeah, so kind of I would say my work in this field over the last 13 years has kind of slowly evolved and built on each other. So I started out really doing domestic violence and sexual trauma work. I went to Denver and that expanded into human trafficking work, but still really focused on the sexual trauma piece. And then I had a child myself and experienced the postpartum period and experienced what a really difficult birth can be like for the postpartum period. So then I became super interested in kind of postpartum work and what that looks like. That kind of got layered on top of when you have sexual trauma, how that shows up in the birth experience, because those things can definitely impact each other. And then I became a parent, right? So then I had a child. And so really starting to look at when you have childhood trauma, how does that actually show up in the parenting experience? Oftentimes we talk about with my clients like parenting with PTSD or parenting when you have previous trauma history can be a really challenging experience because you didn't have the model of another healthy co-regulated adult in your home perhaps, or you never saw what it was like to have a safe environment. So now you're trying to create one for your child. It can be really triggering if you don't know what you're doing, or you haven't done it before, or you haven't had it modeled for you, and then you have this child that's screaming at you and needing you all the time. That transition to being needed all the time can be really dysregulating for people with trauma histories. So the thing when I think about Sage Home that I'm really excited about is this idea of being able to keep mom and baby together, but that this parent having support for parenting while they're in the trenches doing it. So they don't have to go to therapy once a week. They always have someone around that they can who has a more regulated nervous system than them, so that when their child is screaming and bringing up something within them, which is when I screamed as a child, no one responded to me, right? So that gets brought up for them. Then they get to go check in with someone else that's in that space with them, that's in with Sage Home with them. So that's the part that I think is so powerful and so exciting about the model, is having other people around that can walk those early stages of parenting with them, and they get to do it in real time with their baby. So yeah, that's my excitement for kind of my specialties and how I think those intersect with what Sage Home is doing.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. Just kind of because what the goal is resetting kind of their traumatic experience, so not continuing that generational trauma. And kind of what you're bringing up is the environment that supports them is helping them regulate enough to learn the safe parenting strategies.
Yeah.
What kind of setting is necessary for that? What are the things that really help support regulation when it comes to parenting?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, I think having other co-regulated people around you, so others, having therapists on staff, having house people around, I'm assuming is part of it. There'll always be someone around. So I think that's a huge part. I think the environment is a huge part of kind of re-regulating the nervous system. I know Cody came on and talked about nature and what you're surrounded by in your space. I think that's huge. I think feeling like you have resources, you're not struggling to figure out how you're going to feed your baby or get diapers for your baby or get clothes for your baby. If you know their basic needs are met, then you can move, you can land more in the stage of safety, right? And when we think about trauma healing, the first stage is establishing safety. And so when I think about Sage Home, I think oh, this will be a place that over time their nervous system will start to be able to regulate with as safe. And if this place is safe, then I can be safe to bond with my baby. But if I have to be hypervigilant all the time because my environment's not safe, then it's not safe enough for me to put my energy towards another human, because I'm constantly on alert for danger. And I think, I think it's fair to assume a lot of the people that will come into Sage Home, the parents will have a history of trauma and childhood trauma, because we know with substance use, trauma and substance use really go together. It's a way to cope with trauma. And so I think really like making Sage Home a safe environment, not just like the doors are locked, but like, can my nervous system like actually come down here enough for me to then bond with the baby that I want to stay with, that I want to like be able to parent myself.
Yeah, that's good, because there's more to it than just keeping families together. That's a big piece, right? Like creating at least the opportunity to bond. But if they're doing that like home alone with no support or help, their body doesn't get to land into safety as well.
Yeah. I think it's like the difference between like keeping them together in a space and like, I almost think of like the mom looking at the baby, like keeping them together and that they can see each other. Like, I think that's the difference, is like, oh, we want them to be able to actually like notice the other one. And when a person's in a state of trauma, like especially if a mom's had her baby removed, like they don't get to experience that like seeing of the other, and the baby doesn't get to experience that back. Which is a huge part of attachment. I think you jumped on and talked about attachment a few weeks ago. And I think this all plays into like, we can't safely attach if we don't feel safe in our environment.
Yeah, that's a great visual, because even like trauma even diverts our seeing. So just enough basic to like land there. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that is really good insight. And I wish that we had a longer time to interview, but I just really appreciate you coming on and showing how like childhood trauma can be healed through kind of support in the reparenting process.
Yeah. Thanks, Marca. Thanks for all you guys are doing. I'm excited for the next steps.
Awesome. Thanks so much for letting us interview you.
Yeah.